Hello everybody, 6-Speed Dakota here, and today is the next installment in the basics series when we're going to talk about maintenance intervals. What is a maintenance interval? So a maintenance interval is what is, like how often should I do a certain maintenance? Now, well, how often should I do an oil change? How often should I change my transmission fluid? How often should I change my rear axle oil, if applicable? How often should I change my brakes? Or how often should I X, Y, Z? So I hear a lot of different stories about this, and really, there's no set rules for some, and others it's kind of something that you want to stick to. Now, you can basically do what your vehicle manufacturer recommends. So what I'm saying right now is general rules, okay? So for my Dakota here, I change the engine oil every 3,000 miles or 5,000 kilometers if you're Canadian, or every 3 months. Is your most basic of, maintenance intervals. That's basically been said since the dawn of time. Some vehicles recommend more. My mom's vehicle recommends every 6,000 kilometers or 4,000 miles. Same with Hondas. So I usually stick to those. My dad's truck has my Tahoe hybrid. If you search through my vehicles, you'll probably find it somewhere. Has the GM maintenance life monitor, which really doesn't need to be changed very often, according to it. I go by that. It's a bit of a hassle to change the oil on that thing. So that's the most universally known one. Now when it comes to something like your transmission, automatic or manual, the most common interval is every 30,000 miles or 50,000 kilometers. There's not really a set month limit. And the reason you want to change it at those intervals is because the fluids get contaminated and they break down. Especially with an automatic, they go through a lot of heat cycles and stuff like that. So when it comes to something like the transfer case, front axle, rear axle in a 4x4 vehicle, or just the rear axle in a rear-wheel drive vehicle, again, every 30,000 miles, 50,000 kilometers is about the right interval. Now, spark plugs are another one that's quite common, air filter. Now, I'm going to go over basic maintenance things that you can check. Air filters really don't have a set interval to replace them. You mainly just want to check them every so often. I usually try to check them at every oil change, and we'll go over that in one of the future videos. Spark plugs are kind of half and half. When somebody pulls them out to check them, look at them, they can determine whether it's worn out or not. But general rule of thumb is if you got the cheap copper tip plugs, it's about every 25,000 kilometers, 15,000 miles. Platinum or 50,000 kilometers, 30,000 miles, that's the one, sorry, I'm having trouble with my conversions today. And iridium plugs, which are very expensive, are up there in the 75,000 mile, 80,000 mile range, 150,000, 120,000 kilometers. So, you probably don't know what kind of plug you have to start off with, but a lot of vehicle manufacturers nowadays use higher quality spark plugs. So just kind of be aware if you're going into a shop, and they say you need to replace your spark plugs, you kind of have the knowledge to say, okay, are you sure? Now when you're talking about stuff like brakes are a wear item. They're not necessarily maintenance. Now, I know that Honda does a maintenance service every other oil change, and it's about $300 to get the service done. Where they take the brakes off, they sand the pads, and they clean them up, and so on and so forth. In my honest opinion, that's a little bit overkill. I usually do it about every year or so, maybe. If you're starting to hear your brakes squeak a bit, maybe take them off. You might need them taken off, cleaned up, lubricated, so on and so forth. But if your brakes are worn out, it all depends on how you drive. There's no set maintenance interval to something like brakes. Same thing with tires. It all depends on how much you drive, how far you drive, so on and so forth. When your tires are worn out, they need to be replaced. Some people say about every 5 years you should have your tires replaced because of the rubber compounds. I'm not going to argue about that either. Now, one thing about rotating tires, I do recommend rotating tires every other oil change, so every 6,000 miles, 10,000 kilometers. Or if you have a vehicle that doesn't require maintenance so often, like my dad's Tahoe, I rotate them every oil change, about every 10,000 kilometers. Now, when you're talking about fluid changes and stuff like that, I like to flush my power steering fluid or like suck out the old fluid and put in fresh or drain it out. Again, about every 50,000 kilometers. There's belts and hoses. Usually whenever they're bad, you replace them. Again, there's no real set maintenance interval for it. Now, some people do add something like a fuel system additive every year or something like that. You can do that. I mean, you know, if a shop wants to do it for you, or say clean your injectors or something like that, there's a whole lot of bogus services, which I'll go over in my how not to get taken advantage of video. Usually they're pretty bogus. A fuel injection service usually doesn't have to be done unless there's something, unless the vehicle's not running right or something like that. So you got a plugged injector. One thing you can do maintenance-wise is just add a bottle of fuel system cleaner every year or so. Now, as for maintaining your paint, stuff like that, obviously frequent washes. If you watch my how to detail your car without spending your life savings video, that's kind of overkill. I mean, you don't have to wash and wax every time, but I like to wash my vehicle once a week, keep the paint nice and clean, you know, prevent stuff from getting etched in there. But do, if you can, wax your paint maybe once every 3 to 6 months, somewhere in there. I recommend every 3 months, but I'm a crazy person, so the average person can get away with about every 6 months or so. Make sure that you maintain it, because, you know, you want your vehicle to last a long life, you know, and waxing the paint adds an extra layer of protection to it. So that's about and also another thing is clear plastic headlights. Add a layer of wax to these too, because that prevents the lenses from yellowing and stuff like that and looking all gross. That's about all I can think of. I don't know why my garage is open right now, but I think we got some company. Anyway, I'm 6Speed Dakota. You can follow me at facebook.com/6Speed Dakota, Twitter at 6Speed Dakota, Google plus 6Speed Dakota. Take it easy, everyone.